Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Happily Never After. I'm Kate.
And I'm Jay. And today we're going to be talking about the skills that we've attained ever since we've lost our spouses. Kate, let me ask you this. What are some of the things you have really picked up ever since Craig has passed away?
You know, like it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's hard for me to think about because I've always just been a type A, a doer. Like if I don't know something, I YouTube it or I Google it or I figure it out. And I
Yeah.
don't give anybody else the chance to tell me how to do something because I'm stubborn and a brat. For those of you out there who know me will be laughing. Um, but it's wild because the things you don't know that you don't know, uh, especially like I think about the time of year we're in right now, like we're coming into tax season, and I don't think of myself as, unintelligent, but Craig always took care of the taxes and we would sit there, we would do it together, and I would read him the numbers and he would plug it into TurboTax and whatever. But especially that first year, because he passed away in November. And so very quickly after he died, not only am I having to like go through his home office and figure out how to use his very fancy computer where all the documents were saved, but then to like, how the fuck do I
Yep.
navigate this terrible software that's not user friendly, even though it says it is? And like, how do I file taxes? And that sounds terrible to be a grown ass adult and be like, how do I file taxes? But it's always just been a thing that's felt intimidating. And so I outsourced, whether it be, an H&R Block or a TurboTax, or even when I was in college, my college had a program where you could bring your taxes to like the accounting department and the students would help you file taxes and do it for you. So I
Okay.
always just like, it was a nominal fee that I paid, which was a convenience fee, and I outsourced it. And that was my way of figuring it out or solving that problem. And then when he died, I was trying to reduce overhead and it wasn't in the budget to really pay for it. And I was like, I'll just do it myself this year because, it can't be that hard. And oh my God, it was like
Oh,
writing a legislative piece. It was an act of Congress. And then I got audited, which was a whole other headache. And I'm having to figure that part out. And then I'm like literally just grief stricken and in tears. Now, mind you, I was always the hardware, he was always the software. I always joke like I could install a garbage disposal with my eyes closed, but anything tech related, I would like come to him and just be like, fix it. It's broken. And even now, somehow I changed the language on my phone to like German or something. And I'm like, give me help. And he changed it back in like 2 seconds. I'm like, I didn't know you spoke German. He goes, I don't. And he boop, 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 and he would fix it. I'm like, it's not fair, But I think about, I think like there's lots of things like that, I could tune up the riding lawnmower, no problem. But like rebooting the router when the Wi-Fi went out in the middle of a phone conversation, a virtual phone conversation with my son's school, I'm like on my head in a closet trying to dig out the router and like which buttons to push and which password it is. And I'm on the phone with support with, the wireless or the Wi-Fi company. And I am literally like in tears because I was so angry because I was like, he should be here. I'm not supposed to have to do this. He's supposed to do this. And also, how the fuck do I do this? It was just an awful thing to be catapulted into. And that's just a couple of examples of things you just have to fix it yourself. And I don't like that feeling.
I feel, and the thing about it on top of that is it all comes at you in a rush.
Oh my
So
God.
that combined with the fact that it's a extreme learning curve, it's crazy. And the fact that it's always multiple circumstances. It's not just having to do the taxes, like having to do the taxes while you were fixing the router, while you were doing, for me, the biggest thing was learning how to cook.
Oh boy.
Let me tell you, I avoided it like the plague for like maybe the first month since Kim died. We were
How'd that
going,
go?
well, unfortunately, it drained the shit out of my pocket. But
Hmm.
the other thing is, it was an extremely unhealthy lifestyle. And
Well, yeah, because it's not like you're going to like the salad restaurant. You're, You're
right.
eating your feelings a little bit in that regard, right?
And that was it. It was like, I mean, because if it wasn't fast food, it was casual dining. It was like my running joke was that I literally went to every restaurant in the county that I was in.
So you
That
kept people in business, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and of course, I had Morgan at this time was 14, so I needed to keep her entertained in that respect. Plus, she was playing soccer, so she was active, and it was like, I didn't want her to end up with like situations where she was food deprived or a situation where her energy was going low. So I
Yep.
had to put stuff out. And I'm talking about I was doing this breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh.
You
So not
know,
just like one
well,
meal a day or a couple meals a week.
one day, Morgan, okay, eh, she comes in from school, right? Had a hefty soccer practice and was like, Dad, I am hungry. And
Mm.
I was
And
like,
that teenagers, we all know they eat us out of house and
right,
home.
right. So I was like, all
Trust me,
right.
I'm going through that right now.
Now here was my blessing. I had a neighbor had brought over lasagna. All right.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, cool. I cut up a brand new lasagna. Now, mind you, let me explain something, Kate. I already had two lasagnas in the fucking refrigerator.
Why
I
is it
mean,
that everybody brings the lasagna? Can someone explain that to me? Because
because it's
I don't understand that.
easy. Let me tell you, I dubbed lasagna the widower's meal. That's what I dubbed it. Because
I hate it, and everybody brought it, and I was so like bloated and like lethargic from all the like pasta hangover. Like, could someone just bring a fucking charcuterie board? Like,
hey,
have y'all heard of like meat and cheese? Hashtag protein. Like,
like something, and well, you know what it is? A lot of people, when you're going through grief, they don't look at health components, they look at comfort components.
right, but that's usually where maladaptive behaviors start. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. I mean, well, needless to say, let me tell you, I brought the lasagna out and Morgan looked at me like I had put rat poison on her plate.
Yep, I know
And
that look.
she was like, Dad, I love you. And this is the first time I heard her curse. She, she said,
How old
Dad,
was he?
14. She
Oh,
said,
geez.
she goes, if I have to eat this shit again, I'm gonna kill somebody. And, and so I stopped for a second because for a moment, I was kind of upset at the way she said what she said,
Yeah,
but
I get
then,
that.
but then I had to stop and say, this child just lost her mother 6 weeks ago. I have to understand that she is reacting the best way she can. She's 14, you know, and
Mm.
on top of that, you know what? She's been eating fast food for the last month and a half. She
Yep.
wanted she wanted to tell daddy in her way something has to give. So then she turns around and says, you got to cook something. And I
Oh,
was like, so, and my first statement was, well, do you think I'm your mother? That was my first statement. And
oof.
and you know what? I felt so bad about that because I realized something. Since her mom died, that is exactly what I had become. Her mom and her dad.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And so then after some debate, because I finally just gave in and said, you know what? I'm gonna figure it out. After some debate, we settled on tacos. Tacos, mad easy. Thank thank Ortega. Because I'm gonna say right now, if it wasn't for them and their kids, and but we got the Ortega kit. Then we got some guacamole and some sour cream to add on, and went and got some beans and some rice. I do that.
Yeah,
And
dress it up a little bit, a little zhuzhing.
right, so when I got home, it was I knew how to brown meat. I knew how to. My running joke used to be, well, still is. It was like I couldn't even boil water right back in that
without
day.
burning it.
Yeah. But the good thing was I was able to get the beans regulated and then the rice and Morgan, hey, she was going to home ec. So of course
Okay.
it was
So
like
that was a help at home then a little bit, right? Did she take on some of that role or
tons
was
of
she
it.
resistant to it?
No, she big time. Let me tell you, our family has turned into a family of cookers. Me, both my daughters. That was a way for us to create an extra bond.
I
You know,
love that.
it ended up being that way because their whole thing was, I see how hard daddy was trying. So, we're gonna do. And after a while, I had no idea how cooking became so therapeutic to the point where
Mm.
seriously, like I would just throw my headphones on. I just cook. I would spend time. Like I don't eat fast food anymore. The better health situation. I mean, I got to a point, Kate, where I was literally ordering Blue Apron, the mail company where they were delivering
Yep.
shit. Let me tell you, I was putting that shit on Facebook. I was doing all kinds of stuff.
You're one of those teenage girls Instagramming your plate.
Yeah, yeah. Let me tell you,
I
all kind.
love it.
Well, let me give you a second aspect to the story. I'm putting this stuff on Facebook now. I'm cooking every night for my youngest daughter. And the reason why was because we had so much fun. And for the first time since her mom died, I heard her laugh.
Oh, what a gift.
And it was just like, so at that point I said to myself, if I'm gonna help bring this kid back, I'm gonna learn as much as I can to do it. And because cooking is something she clearly is okay with. So,
Mhm. Well, it
but
brought you guys closer together, especially because you'd mentioned previously that Kim was the cook, right? Like she put on that great Easter dinner and like she was the one. So it gave you guys, you and Morgan, something to do that brought you together and helped you bond and helped you process your grief, but also was a way of like honoring Kim and like having that nostalgia versus that sadness through grief. And I feel like that is such a an alchemistic, like a making lemonade out of lemons philosophy that we in grief sometimes don't see until someone else points it out. So like such a
it,
beautiful way to like have that appreciation.
it got even bigger because, like I told you, I'm putting the food out on Facebook, and I get a call down from my oldest daughter who's in Hampton at this point. She's in college, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Daddy, is you cooking this stuff?" And
Yeah.
I was like,
In
"Yeah."
disbelief, right?
Yeah. She was like, "Well, you know what? Me and my two friends are coming up. I want you to make this, this, and this so that when we come up." So I have prepared everything. Let me literally, as I was finishing plating the food, they pull up.
Okay.
So now I make this incredible spread. Plus, I said I'm going to make some extra food so they can take back with them. I
Instead
made
of with that Tupperware.
Right. I made nachos. I made more. Again, back to the Mexican food theme because it was
Because
the
it's
East
easy. I hate to say it, but it's easy.
tacos, burritos, tacos, all kinds of stuff. What was interesting about it, Kate, they ate everything.
Wow,
Like
really?
my oldest daughter and her two friends, and my youngest daughter and her friend. And let me tell you, Kate, all I could hear them say was, "Yo, your dad made this shit really good."
Yeah,
I went in the bathroom and just started freaking bawling. For the longest time, Kate, I didn't feel like I could do anything. And
I get
that's
that.
that's what I'm trying to explain. Excuse the long story, but that's what I'm trying to explain to the audience. You will find that you can do so much more than you thought you could do. A big part of it is the loss of your spouse is going to drive you. But the other part is that you will learn to become a different version of you as you do it. Like I cook all the time. My book that I'm working on is called Grief, a recipe and the ingredient of life. Because
Mm.
because I cook so much and I fall in love with it. I mean, like I said, and I know cooking is therapeutic. Research has shown that when you put your mind into something, especially when you had an experience, you take your mind out of the thought process of the experience because you are focused on the new thing you're learning. Like I said before, I can remember I would put on my headphones and it would just be me, music, and food.
I love that. Like I feel like that should be super celebrated because to just be empowered enough to like you saw the need and then you went like, okay, let's do it and you leaned into it. And I feel like that's not common for men, but for widowhood in general. Like it's so easy for us to get caught up in the defeatist victim mentality that I can't and throw our hands up and the sky is falling, that chicken little. And it certainly like that felt that way for me. And I think about the parameters of my relationship with Craig, where he quite literally plucked me out of poverty. Like when we met, I was a, single parent on welfare, living with my parents temporarily and, working two full-time jobs, going to school full time. I had just finished school right after, like right before I met him. And it was just like an insane way of living. And then to meet him and have him just literally reach down and like put me back on even keel to he really did take care of me in a lot of ways and taught me a lot of things and helped me grow as a person. So when he died, even though we'd been together for, you know, 12 years, almost married almost 10, there I still felt like there was so much I didn't know and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm right back in that place where he found me." Like he put that thing back where it came from or so help me. Make a Disney reference. If you know, you know. And it just I was right back there. I was right back at what felt like that place of like poverty and insecurity and instability, and it was terrifying to go there again because I was like I finally overcame all those hurdles, and to have that peace of mind and then to just be like shoved out of the plane without a parachute, catastrophic. And I didn't realize how much I was relying on him and dependent on him for sage advice and practical knowledge and life experience. But I think about it now and the things I'm doing, and I have done them, like I did file the taxes and I did get through an audit and I do, like reboot the router and I did install smart thermostats myself. And like I all these people are like, "Oh my god, what do you mean you're not tech savvy? Have you seen your website?" Or I'm talking to people about like, "Oh, just use the hyperlink and blah 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 blah. And here's an Excel document and la 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 la." And I'm like, "God, Craig would be rolling if he heard this because he'd be like, 'Who the hell are you?'" And I'm
No,
just like, he taught me that. He gave me not just the actual tangible skill, but like the self-efficacy, the belief in my own ability to
yeah,
do. And that was a wild realization that didn't come right away after he passed. Like having to reboot the router came a couple weeks, having to file the taxes came a couple weeks, and that sucked and it was hard, but then I felt super proud and accomplished. I was like, yeah, I did it. But year, 2 year, 3 years later, I go, oh my God, mind blown. It's so much bigger than that. It's that self-efficacy, that aptitude that I didn't realize is what he actually gave me. I can go learn the things because I've always been the YouTube person. Like, I don't know it, go YouTube it. But I never in a million years would have YouTubed how to reboot the router because I would have defaulted to and I hate to say damsel in distress, but I would have defaulted to that because that was his role. And having that like, nope, I can figure this out. I am no princess. I do not need saving. I am a queen. Straighten my crown and get to work. Like
I
that was
feel,
a wild understanding.
but you know what, Kate? It's funny. My situation was a little bit different than yours because Here's what was crazy. Remember, I kind of had been plucked out of that situation myself. Years being acclimated to it and learning how to run within that world. What was incredible was that, like you said, when she left, it was like now I'm in this big house and I'm doing all these things and we were doing it with each other, but now it's just me having to do all this. I remember I cooked a meal. I know my mother-in-law had been just going out eating for Lord knows how long. So I cooked the meal and I brought it over and I said, I've learned to cook. I've gotten pretty good at it. First thing she said to me was, is it good? And the second thing she said was, we usually eat breast meat. It was chicken. I had chicken legs. She was like, we usually eat breast meat. We don't eat dark meat, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
So that was a hit to me. But then I had to keep remembering what my kids had said, what their friends had said.
Hmm.
My daughters don't complain about my food at all. As a matter of fact, they're like, Daddy, can we have more?
Nice. What a like affirmation to that like aptitude.
And and so look, I didn't understand that at the particular time, some people were doubting the fact that you can move forward. Also, when you're also doubting yourself at the same time, like you said, but it became affirmation that you can do these things. To the audience, the whole thing is I know what me and Kate are saying sounds harsh, but reality is you are going to go through this wild ride in the beginning. Learn as much as you can about what your spouse does. You don't have to be an expert, but learn what they do because
Yeah.
there is an inevitability. One of you, unfortunately, will die. Well, both of you will, but one of you will may die before the other.
One of
And
you's gonna go first. Yep.
right. And if that's the case, to have a knowledge of, you can expand if you have a knowledge of. But if you're learning from the door, what ends up happening, that learning curve combined with the loss, combined with the fact that there are so many other aspects that you have to deal with, it almost becomes a point of overwhelm.
It's like
And
trial by fire, and nobody
yes,
should have to run that gauntlet.
in certain
It's like
situations,
Lord of the Flies. It really is. Like,
yes, yes. And dealing with the taxes, you knew the consequences. If you didn't figure this out, there were family consequences. If I didn't figure this out, my daughter was gonna starve. We had to make it work. Those things will it forces your mind to look at things different. You're no longer, like you said, the damsel in distress. You are the person that's now straightening their crown. Why?
yes.
Just like my whole thing is like, I tell dudes, like, look, man, there's nothing wrong with learning how to cook. You know, I'm the
Then you get
most,
into like, social perception and like gender perceptions, like, the typical feminine role to like push the broom and, nurse the babies. And, you guys have to learn that. And it makes me think of our previous conversation around solo parenting. I recently, like last night, I went out to dinner with a friend and had a conversation about my teenage son and how I'm struggling to like connect with him and parent him and get him to understand. And this friend of mine was like, boys are different and you are inadvertently emasculating him. And I was like, what? And I almost got offended. And he was like, because you're in a feminine energy and you're trying to parent him as a female, there's the feather and the stone, and you're having to be both. And he is struggling with that dynamic. And that's why you're really seeing a disconnect in his response. And it's not like he's being a bad kid. It's not like he's being like insubordinate, or he's a great kid. Don't get me wrong. But being a teenager is hard enough. And then you layer grief on top of that. And then you take
yep,
that parenting dynamic
yep,
where I was the feather, as you put it in that beautiful episode. And for those of you who haven't heard our conversation on solo parenting, please go check it out. I think it's a riveting conversation, one of my favorite ones so far. But it really was, Craig was the stone, the carrot and the stick, so to speak. And I was
And
the carrot and Craig was the stick. And
it
now I'm having to be both. And I'm having to learn how to be the stone, which I don't know how to do, and hold that line, but also I'm having to learn how to get back to being the feather. But
gotta
it's a
have
very
both. Like,
right.
it's
You have to learn
exactly.
how to have both, but you have to give the kid what they need. So that's another thing I had to learn, how to be the stone. So difficult. And then I get mad at Craig again too, because I'm like, he should be here to do this. I shouldn't have to do this alone, and all of those other things. But again, that's a conversation for another time too.
Boy,
It's
Kate,
it's so
gotta break in here. I gotta break in here and not to cut you off, but let me explain something. You just said something that was incredible because I remember it happened to me before Kim died. I am my mom was a single mom. The emasculation aspect, it's
and it's not intentional. Like we
unconscious.
don't mean to.
Like my mom, I remember like half the reason why I got into a lot of bullshit relationships was because seriously, my mom was like, "This is how you treat women. This is how you do this. This is how you, you know," and never telling me that women can be this, this, and that, and they will ask fuck you if And again, it's
Yeah, women were never the villain because you're just supposed to
right,
blanket
right,
respect women.
and,
It
and
wasn't about mutual respect.
And that was my point. It was, and I need to be clear there. I was like, I'm not saying all women are bad or anything, but it's mutual respect. And a man will teach you how to look out for these things, where a woman will make every other woman seem like they're a princess.
It's blank. Yeah, it's like, well, I'm a woman and you should respect me. Well, only if
Right.
they respect you first. And to be clear, that's absolutely how I treat, talking to my son about relations. I'm like, I don't care if they are man, woman, black, white, purple, tall, short, old, young. I don't care. Respect is earned, not given. And as long as they are treating you with respect, you should and do respect them. Never initiate the disrespect, but if they are not respectful for you, to you, you can hold that boundary and, respectfully remove yourself from a situation. Um, I digress. But it was more about, like, my friend pointed out, the emasculation was coming from how I was parenting him, because I was parenting him from a feminine energy, you know, cleaning his room and then like inadvertently shaming him because I'm like, what is this? Versus like, I reserve the right to toss his room. I find it's not a threat, put it back, leave it alone. There's no point in having confrontation about it. Like
Right. Right.
it's how you approach dialogue is different as a man than it is as a woman, and you can understand it and you can attempt to approach it, and I don't mean to be offensive or controversial, but man to man conversations, especially when it's relations, is much different than woman to man conversations. You as a mother cannot have that relationship with your son as any other man can have with the boy.
And that part is absolutely true because even now, there are things that I cannot address with the girls the way I like to. And
Yeah,
what I'm blessed about, and like I think I said this to you before, what I'm blessed about is because they're two girls, they can have that with each other. And Ryan's older than Morgan, so it's like Morgan will go to Ryan. Ryan will be like, well, this is what I learned, this is what I did, this what so that's a blessing in that respect. And also, I've had to learn that sometimes some things are so out of your purview, leave it alone.
yeah.
You you
As
can't
long
deal.
as there's no intrinsic danger
Right,
or risk,
right,
or
right.
that sometimes you got to pick your battles, and it's just let sleeping dogs lie. I definitely have
And that
learned that too.
look, as a solo parent, we have to look at it that way. this show's not about solo parent. This show is literally about picking up new skills. But
That's probably the biggest skill I had to pick up, you know, like, yeah, doing the taxes was hard, and cleaning out the, you know, the garbage disposal or the central vac, those were hard, and but all of them, I think the hardest one that you just can't hop on YouTube for. I
right,
mean, I guess you could, I'm sure there's videos that exist, but for me, it's so much bigger than that, right?
learning
Like, how do you eat an elephant? But I think it was like learning to be two parents in
yes,
one body and understand and know and accept that that's still ineffective
uh,
and not feel inadequate as a person, and making sure you're not inflicting more trauma. Like, it, that's probably the hardest skill, is that other type, that other parenting style, that other dynamic that you then have to embody. It's like having split personality disorder. I swear, I feel like Jekyll and Hyde some days.
well, it's like that. What I wanted to say, I, this show's not about that, but it morphs into that because if you have children, you are automatically forced to become 50% of a circumstance and to learn how to manage that circumstance similar to the way it was managed with your spouse, but also with your own flair. I mean, I had to remember, like, another thing. Look, when you got girls and you're bald, it's crazy because braiding their hair and doing their hair. See, mommy was used to taking them to the places and braiding their hair and doing all. Man, I remember I when I had to take them deal with the hair play, I had to ask her mother-in-law where, you know, I,
Yeah.
you
Well, I
know,
think that's the other important component to this, is like you said earlier, you have to learn everything about your spouse. Well, once you learn that, know where to outsource. Know
right.
where, I'm not soup to nuts. I am not all inclusive. I am not a resort in the Bahamas. Um, but just have to I just have to remember, like, okay, like, I'm not who's going to help the kids with their math homework. That's not me. Who do I know? Who do I have in my web of people, or what tools are out there? Like, there's so many great apps out there. Actually, I found one. I wish I could remember the name of it. I think it's called like Snap Math, but you literally turn on like the camera on your phone and you like almost QR scan the math problem, and then it will give you step by step guidance on how to solve the problem. And
Okay.
so, like, I would do that, and then I could, like, oh, you know, my son wasn't understanding a math problem, and I found this by, I was like Googling. Again, that's what I do, 3 a.m., 27 pages deep on a Google search. How
Oh,
do I? And so I found this on like a blog or a parent discussion board, and it was like, oh, Snap Math, and you take a picture of the math problem, and then I would be like, okay, like, what aren't you understanding? And I'd be like, well, here's step one, and see if he could like take it from there. But then if he couldn't, then I would spoon feed him the next step. And it got us through middle school. Honestly, like, that was a saving grace. I'm a math and or I'm a English and a history and a language person. So for him to come to me and be like, hey mom, how do I do algebra? I'd be like, that's a great question, because I didn't do well with that.
I'm not the math guy either. And when the girls,
Gotta find the tools that help you.
what I was blessed about, seriously, one of my wife's good friends. Well, a good friend of ours.
That's not a Freudian slip. I don't know what is.
What happened was my my daughter was on the soccer team with her daughter. So we all kind of bonded that way. And she happens to be a biology teacher who's incredibly good in math and all that. And
Wow.
I would call her, and she happened to be at my daughter's high school. So I would call her and be like, "Can you help us out with this?" She was like, "You know what? Bring it over." That way, you talked about being able to learn how to outsource, and you have to come to some realities with that.
And you have to
And
humble yourself to asking for help, knowing you may not get it, but a ask for help. It's not a Chicken Little situation. It's not the sky is falling, but like, okay, like, I don't know this. Instead of just freaking out and going, I can't do it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps a little bit and go, okay, this has to get done. what's step number one? Step number one is find out how to do it. And then if I can do it myself, do it. And whether you use Google or YouTube or ask a friend or, phone a friend, like we're playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, whatever that may be. And then that doesn't work. So you go, okay, no one knows how to do it. Or I can't figure out how to do it myself. Who do I know that knows how to do it? And then you do that. And if you can't do that, then you finally put it out into the ether. Like there's been certain number of times I've gone on Facebook and been like, anybody in my network know
Yes.
X, Y, or Z, or
Yes.
even on my LinkedIn, on my professional LinkedIn for personal things. I'm like, anybody in my network know how to blah, blah, blah. And eventually it comes back, or someone is like, I don't know, but here's a place to start. And I may not have thought of that place. And you have to get a little scrappy and a little resourceful. And it's hard when you're already doing everything by yourself. It's hard to have that wherewithal and that drive and that bandwidth to figure out one more thing. But I promise you guys, like the level of sense of accomplishment and pride and growth that you're going to feel is so worth it. I will
Absolutely.
asterisk that by saying there is sometimes sadness and grief, because you then have that awareness of like, I've grown as a person. I'm no longer the person I was when they were alive, and this is what they were supposed to be doing. So there's an awareness of missing them, but try to lean into the pride and try to lean into the accomplishment and that self-efficacy. Like you've now developed a new skill, and that means you're doing more than just surviving, you're thriving.
And the last thing I'm gonna say about this, I mean, before we go, is that don't look at this as the deep sadness situation. Look at it as you are honoring the person you lost, because guess what? I'm sure Kim looked down at me like, man, why weren't you doing this when I was alive? You know what I'm saying? To help her out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know she's proud
Yeah,
that
I definitely feel that. Like that, I think that's more of where the pride comes from. Is not only am I proud of myself, but it's I'm proud of the fact that Craig would be proud of me. Like
that
so incredibly, he would be like jumping up and down, like being my biggest cheerleader. And I'm sure Kim would be doing the same thing. So,
absolutely.
but
I
for all of the listeners out there, like we're here and we have resources. Like I know on my website, I definitely have resources on how-tos for certain things. And Jay, it's what you do. You're an empowerment coach, so you're definitely here to help support people as they learn these skills and grow. So I encourage anyone out there who's feeling stuck or lost or anything like that to reach out to us, go to our website, go to our social, send us a message. We'd love to hear from you guys, even posting in comments and things like that. Definitely want to make sure we answer any questions or concerns that you guys have. What a
it
great conversation today. This was awesome.
seriously, Kate. I mean, because it's one of those conversations where a, s- a spouse, when you lose a spouse, it's a whole bunch of new responsibilities. You have gone from 50% in many situations to now 100%. And you just have to be prepared to deal with that. And then not only be prepared to deal with it, you have to have that sense within yourself to say, no matter what, I am going to make it happen. You must become determined.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. But listen, Kate, again, you're right. Great conversation. So I really appreciate I really appreciate having this with you because it
Yeah,
makes
this was a great day. And I look forward to the next time that we get to talk about something. So we'll catch up again soon. And until next time.
all right. I'm Jay.
And I'm Kate. Thank you for joining us.
Talk to you later. Have a good one.
You've been listening to Happily Never After, part of the Xvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Happily Never After, as well as the rest of the network, at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.